My name is Michael Carter. I'm 36 years old, and I live in a small town in Ohio with my wife, Jessica. People often think losing someone happens only once. They believe the pain comes on the day of the funeral. But that is not true. Sometimes you lose the same person again and again. Every memory reminds you that they are gone. For me, that person was my father. My father, Robert Carter, was a quiet man. He did not have much money, but he worked hard every day. He was a carpenter. His hands were always rough, but his heart was gentle. When I was a boy, we spent every weekend fixing our old family house together. We painted the walls. We repaired the fence. We planted flowers in the yard. He always smiled and said, "A house is made of wood and bricks. A home is made of love." Those words stayed with me all my life. 5 years ago, my father became very sick. The doctors tried their best, but nothing could save him. Before he died, he called me into his hospital room. He held my hand with the little strength he had left. "Michael," he whispered, "promise me one thing." I nodded. "Please keep our family home. Don't let it disappear. Every wall has our memories." I could barely speak. "I promise, Dad." He smiled one last time. 2 days later, he was gone. Keeping that promise became the most important thing in my life. The house was not large. It was old. The roof needed repairs almost every year. The kitchen looked like it belonged in another century. But every room reminded me of my father. I could still imagine him drinking coffee near the window every morning. I could almost hear his laugh in the backyard. Whenever life became difficult, I drove there and sat on the front porch. It made me feel close to him again. Jessica knew how much the house meant to me. At least, I believed she did. When we first got married, she often came with me. She even helped me clean the garden. "I understand why you love this place," she once said. "It feels peaceful." Hearing that made me happy. I thought she respected my father's memory. For several years, everything seemed fine. Then life became harder. Prices went up. Jessica wanted a bigger house. She wanted a newer car. She wanted expensive vacations like the ones she saw on social media. I worked longer hours as an accountant, but it never seemed enough. One evening, while we were eating dinner, she looked at me seriously. "Michael, why are we keeping that old house?" I looked up from my plate. "What do you mean?" "We never lived there." "It's my father's house." She sighed. "It's just sitting there." I felt uncomfortable. "It isn't just a house." She rolled her eyes. "You always say that." I stayed quiet. After a moment, she continued. "Do you know how much money we could get if we sold it?" I immediately shook my head. "No." "Why not?" "Because I promised my father." Jessica put down her fork. "Your father is gone." Those 4 words hit me harder than she could ever imagine. I looked at her in silence. She continued eating as if she had said nothing wrong. That night, I could not sleep. I kept hearing my father's voice. "A home is made of love." The next morning, I drove to the old house. I walked slowly through every room. The wooden floor still made the same sounds. The smell of old pine wood filled the air. I smiled through my tears. "I kept my promise, Dad," I whispered. "I won't let anyone take this place." As I was leaving, my neighbor, Mrs. Wilson, walked toward me. She had known my father for over 30 years. She smiled warmly. "It's good to see you, Michael." "It's good to see you, too." Then her smile slowly disappeared. "I thought your wife already told you." A strange feeling filled my stomach. "Told me what?" Mrs. Wilson looked confused. "I saw strangers here yesterday." My heart began beating faster. "They were measuring the property." I stared at her. She continued quietly. "They said they were preparing the house for its new owner." For a moment, I could not breathe. New owner? Those two words echoed inside my head. I had never signed any papers. I had never agreed to sell my father's house. Then why were strangers already planning to take it? For several seconds, I stood frozen in front of the old house. Mrs. Wilson looked worried. "Michael, are you okay?" I could not answer. My mind was racing. "There must be a mistake," I finally said. "I never sold this house." She looked surprised. The men sounded very confident. They said the paperwork was almost finished. I thanked her and hurried back to my car. My hands were shaking so badly that I dropped my keys twice before I could start the engine. The drive home felt longer than ever. I kept asking myself the same question. Who could sell my father's house without telling me? When I walked into the house, Jessica was sitting on the couch, looking at her phone. She smiled when she saw me. "You're home early." I didn't smile back. "I need to ask you something." She looked up. "What is it?" I took a deep breath. "Were people at my father's house yesterday?" Her smile disappeared for a second. Then she looked away. "I don't know." "Jessica!" She stayed silent. I walked closer. "Please tell me the truth." She slowly put her phone on the table. "They were only inspectors." My heart sank. "Inspectors? Why?" She crossed her arms. "Because the house is being sold." The room became completely silent. I stared at her, waiting for her to laugh and tell me it was a joke. She never did. "What did you just say?" "I said the house is being sold." "No." She frowned. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean no. That house is not for sale." She stood up. "It is now." I felt my chest tighten. "Jessica, I never agreed to this." "You didn't have to." Those words hit me like a punch. "What does that mean?" She walked into the kitchen and came back with a folder. She placed it on the coffee table. "Read it." I opened the folder. Inside were copies of legal documents, property papers, real estate contracts, offer letters. Everything looked official, but I could not understand how. I never signed these. Jessica avoided my eyes. "You signed a power of attorney last year." I remembered. Last year, I had been traveling for work. Jessica told me signing those papers would let her handle small financial matters while I was away. I trusted her. I never imagined she would use them for something like this. "You lied to me." "I didn't lie." You said it was for paying bills. It helped. No, Jessica. My voice broke. It helped you sell my father's home. She let out a long sigh. You are being emotional. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Of course I'm emotional. She shook her head. We've been struggling with money. We're not struggling. We could be living so much better. I looked around our comfortable home. We pay our bills. We have food. We have jobs. But we don't have the life I want. Her words felt colder than winter. I don't understand. She looked directly at me. I don't want to spend my whole life living in average houses and driving old cars. I whispered. So you sold my father's memories? It wasn't memories. It was an old building. No. I felt tears filling my eyes. It was the last thing my father left me. Jessica folded her arms again. You care more about a dead man's house than your living wife? I stepped backward. I had never felt so far away from the woman I married. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. No, you don't. I sat down because my legs could barely hold me. My father built that house with his own hands. He raised me there. He asked me to protect it before he died. Jessica looked impatient. Promises don't pay mortgages. I stared at her. This was never about money. It was always about money. I slowly shook my head. No. It was about greed. Her face turned red. So now I'm greedy? I answered quietly. Yes. She grabbed her purse. I won't stand here while you judge me. She walked toward the front door. Before leaving, she turned around. The buyers already paid the deposit. The closing is next week. Nothing can stop it now. The door slammed behind her. I sat alone in complete silence. The folder rested on my lap. Inside it was every paper that was taking my father's dream away. Hours later, I drove back to the old neighborhood. The sun was beginning to set. I parked across the street and watched the house. A black SUV stopped in front of it. A well-dressed couple stepped out with a real estate agent. They smiled as they walked around the yard. The agent pointed at the porch, where my father and I used to drink lemonade every summer. The couple laughed and nodded. To them, it was the beginning of a new chapter. To me, it felt like someone was erasing my past, one memory at a time. Standing across the street, I realized something that hurt even more than losing the house. The person who had broken my father's final wish was the woman I had trusted with my whole heart. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's smile. Then I saw strangers walking through his house. When the sun came up, I made a decision. I wasn't ready to give up. I called the real estate company as soon as their office opened. My name is Michael Carter, I said. I need information about the property on Maple Street. The woman on the phone was polite. I'm sorry, sir, but I can't discuss the sale. I'm the owner. There was a long pause. According to our records, your wife is acting under a legal power of attorney. My heart sank. So the sale is legal? I'm afraid I can't give legal advice, sir. The call ended. I sat in silence. For the first time, I realized that trusting someone without asking questions could cost everything. Later that afternoon, I visited a lawyer. His name was David Brooks. He carefully read every document I brought. When he finished, he looked at me with kind eyes. "I wish I had better news." I held my breath. "The power of attorney gave your wife authority to handle this transaction. So I can't stop the sale? There may be a chance if we prove fraud or misuse, but it won't happen overnight. Will we make it before the closing?" He slowly shook his head. "I don't think so." I thanked him and left his office. Outside, the sky was gray. Rain began falling softly. It matched exactly how I felt inside. Instead of going home, I drove to my father's house. The front door was unlocked. Workers were already inside. One man was removing the old kitchen cabinets. Another carried boxes out the back door. I walked slowly into the living room. The walls looked empty. The family pictures were gone. The curtains my mother had sewn years ago had already been taken down. Everything felt different. A young worker noticed me. "Can I help you, sir?" I forced a small smile. "No." I just wanted to look around one last time. He nodded respectfully and walked away. I entered my father's bedroom. The room was almost empty. Only one old wooden dresser remained. As I touched it, memories rushed back. I remembered my father teaching me how to tie a necktie before my first job interview. I remembered him sitting beside me after my mother's funeral, telling me that life would hurt sometimes, but love was always worth it. Tears rolled down my face. "I failed you, Dad," I whispered. "I couldn't protect your home." As I wiped away my tears, I noticed something strange. One drawer would not close completely. I pulled it open. At the very back was a small brown envelope covered with dust. My name was written on it. For Michael. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. The paper had become yellow with age. I immediately recognized my father's handwriting. "My dear son, if you are reading this, I am no longer with you. I know you will do everything you can to keep this house. But remember something more important. A house is only wood and stone. Your kindness, your honesty, and your heart are worth much more. If someone ever asks you to choose between a building and your peace, choose peace. But never stay with people who treat love like money. You deserve people who protect your heart, not people who sell it. I'm already proud of you. Love, Dad." I could no longer hold back my tears. I sat on the floor and cried like a little boy. At that moment, I finally understood. My father had never wanted me to suffer forever because of a house. He wanted me to protect something even more valuable. Myself. As I carefully folded the letter, I heard footsteps behind me. It was Jessica. She looked around the nearly empty room. "So, this is where you've been." I stood up slowly. She noticed the letter in my hand. "What's that?" "My father left it for me." She reached toward it. "Can I read it?" I quietly stepped back. "No." She looked surprised. "Why not?" Because those words were meant for someone who understood love. For the first time since we met, Jessica had no answer. She looked at the empty room, then back at me. There was a sadness in her eyes I had never seen before. In a soft voice, she said, "Michael, I didn't think this would hurt you so much." I looked at her for a long moment. Then I answered with tears still in my eyes. "You didn't sell my father's house, Jessica. You sold the trust I gave you." Her eyes filled with tears. But this time, I didn't know if they came from regret or from finally realizing everything she had destroyed. Jessica lowered her head. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The empty house was silent except for the sound of workers outside. Finally, she looked at me. "I'm sorry." I wanted those words to make everything better. I wanted them to erase the papers she had signed. I wanted them to bring back the years my father spent building this home. But they couldn't. Some mistakes are too big for one apology. I looked at her calmly. "I believed you would protect my heart." She wiped away her tears. "I thought I was helping us." "You never asked what us meant to me." She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. For the first time, I saw that she understood the damage she had caused, not just to our marriage, to my trust. A few days later, the sale was completed. The house officially belonged to another family. Driving past it felt like saying goodbye to my father all over again. For weeks, I avoided that street. Every time I thought about the house, my chest felt heavy. Jessica tried many times to talk. She cooked my favorite meals. She left small notes on the kitchen table. She even suggested marriage counseling. But something inside me had changed. Love cannot grow where trust has disappeared. One evening, I sat across from her at our dining table. The room was quiet. "I've made my decision," I said. She looked at me with hopeful eyes. "We can fix this." I slowly shook my head. "I don't think we can." Her face turned pale. "You want a divorce?" I nodded. "I don't hate you. I simply can't spend the rest of my life wondering what promise will be broken next." Tears rolled down her face. "I never wanted to lose you." I answered softly. "You lost me the day you chose money over honesty." Neither of us spoke again. A month later, our divorce was final. It was painful. Ending a marriage is never something to celebrate. But for the first time in many months, I felt peaceful. One Saturday morning, I received an unexpected phone call. It was the couple who had bought my father's house. The husband introduced himself. "My name is Ethan. I hope I'm not bothering you." "Not at all." He hesitated before speaking again. "When we started renovating the house, the neighbors told us about your father. They told us how much he loved this place." I stayed silent. Ethan continued. "We also heard what happened." "My wife and I wanted you to know something." I listened carefully. "We're keeping the house." "We aren't tearing it down." "We've repaired the roof, but we're keeping the old porch." "The garden is staying too." I closed my eyes. My father had planted that garden with my mother. Ethan smiled through the phone. "We believe every house has a story." We want to respect yours. For the first time since losing the house, I smiled. Thank you. A few weeks later, they invited me to visit. As I walked through the front yard, I saw fresh flowers blooming beside the old porch. The large oak tree was still standing. The wooden swing my father had built was still there. Inside, many things had changed. The walls had fresh paint. The furniture was different. But the feeling of warmth remained. Ethan handed me a small wooden box. We found this while repairing the attic. Inside the box were old photographs. There was a picture of my parents on their wedding day. Another showed me as a little boy sitting on my father's shoulders. There was also a photo of my father holding a wooden sign. On it, he had written the words he loved most. A home is made of love. I smiled through my tears. That evening, I drove to the cemetery. I placed the photographs beside my father's grave. Then I took out the letter he had written for me. I understand now, Dad, I whispered. I thought keeping my promise meant holding on to the house. I was wrong. I kept your promise when I chose honesty instead of lies. I kept your promise when I walked away from someone who didn't respect our family. And I kept your promise because I never stopped loving you. A gentle breeze moved through the trees. For a moment, it felt as if my father were standing beside me again. I smiled, not because life had become perfect, but because I had finally found peace. Sometimes the greatest inheritance our parents leave us isn't a house. It is the values they teach us. Money can buy buildings. It can buy land. It can buy expensive cars. But it can never buy trust. It can never replace family. And it can never build a home. Because my father was right all along. A house is made of wood and bricks. But a home will always be made of love.